Dobrodošli. Welcome all the participants and attendants of this conference on NSK. I wish to add just a few more thoughts to what Zdenka Badovinac had already said. What is the purpose and aim of this conference? Perhaps not much different than other conferences that we are attending and visiting and participating around. I would like to mention just a little bit different context that is associated with the subject that we are presenting and discussing at this conference today. First of all, I would like to make a point that the development of NSK from its founding in 1984 was able to introduce the difference into the society precisely because it happened at the time of intense democratization of this and other societies of Eastern Europe. It was really ever taste what democracy is and how it should function. It was precisely sometime between 1984 and 1991 when not only people but also institutions and politicians were open to dialogue and social change. In this sense, we can say that NSK hit a very lucky curve of history, and more than any avant-garde or proto-avant-garde or post-avant-garde phenomenon before, received a substantial critical reception already in the time of its development and afterwards. So this exhibition and this conference and all the other events that accompany is therefore just another step in the process of NSK critical reception and cultural and intellectual consumption. This event today is not taking an art phenomenon, like avant-garde art phenomenon out of the dirty and dusty archive, what actually happened a lot before, especially with the historic pre-war avant-gardes and also some avant-garde phenomena of the post-war times. This event builds on an important critical base that scholarship produced, especially during from the 1990s on. Here I would like to mention mostly a very important work of critical processing and writing, such as the work and the books produced by Alexei Lebron, Inka Arns, Marina Gershnich, and many others, who generated the first narratives that try to make sense about NSK phenomenon and integrate into a general cultural values systems and critical categories through which the work of NSK was communicated and is spoken about today. As a member of NSK who works mostly with text and discourse, unlike my colleagues who are responsible for much more characteristic image and performative aspects of NSK art, I'm aware that there is no absolutely satisfying and definitive translation of images and performative gestures into words, or vice versa. But my motto is not to look on and mourn about what is lost in translation, but to celebrate and embrace what is gained, as I hope we will gain a lot from what we will discuss here today. Opening this conference today, in this opening speech to this conference today, I would like to express my excitement and curiosity about all the new aspects and positions that the speakers will share with us during this conference that started with an extremely lucid and insightful remarks introduced by Boris Preuss in his keynote lecture last night. Among many interesting topics that he introduced, I would like to comment just one, as I consider it crucial not only for NSK but for broader cultural and institutional context in which we operate today. So Gross mentioned that the main difference between the postmodern approaches of, for example, Jürgen, but we could say also for other NSK groups, in comparison to, let's say, typical American or West European postmodern art production, is grounded in the institutional context. What we call postmodernism was defined in the West as the reaction to modernist doctrine, and its institutionalization, which was internationally and globally accepted as an absolute normative thing. Here it is important to remind ourselves that, for example, Harold Greenberg's influential essay Art and Avant-Garde and Kitsch, published in 1936, builds its argument in polemical and comparative manner in relation to cultural policies of USSR, which were at that time already in the grips of Stalinism. He advocates for American painting as an avant-garde, but he says that he makes the point that no avant-garde can survive just on its own without being recognized and connected to the elites with what he called the umbilical cord of gold. Western international art system, which forms, which forms the base for today's global system, was the conscious and functional project of Western Cold War policies. This is not a secret anymore in the historical evaluations that are available nowadays. So after 1950, it grew and spread with an incredible speed, and soon became a system that served its own purposes and interests as much as those of the artists and the artistic trends it represented. In support to what Royce had said yesterday, I will quote Jack Burham, who said that Western avant-garde artists, he called the emerging art such as conceptual art and similar trends, that's what remained of an avant-garde of the pre-World War period. He said that these proto-avant-garde art trends at one point realized that this system had so developed that, technically speaking, could function without an artwork, while an artwork cannot function without a support system. So, according to his point of view, the neo-avant-garde trends in the West, by definition, grew and developed with this awareness, and in this sense, institutional critique that we will have in our session today can be a parameter that we should keep in mind. So, the important thing here is that while the subversive role of the artwork as an object in turning of attention to the meaning and value-producing system of artwork itself become the main preoccupation of the Western view of avant-garde art, this paradoxically didn't really hurt or disabilitate the system very much. Neo-avant-garde break with the high modernist narrative was, of course, significant, but on the other hand, these neo-avant-garde inherited the system, which, of course, never happened in the places that went through these processes. And that's how I understood Boris Groy's point yesterday. The neo-avant-garde movements in the West inherited a modernist art system which, with no problems, adopted new narratives and continued its now global expansion. The real socialist cultural policies, on the other hand, prevented the establishment and comparable institutional support system and were, as Doris mentioned, disabled, crippled, or somehow broken due to the internal contradiction between the international and planetary aspiration of the original socialist and communist imperatives and the tailoring these imperatives to the narrow and unambitional national context. Therefore, not only NSK, but also all other artists and movements in Slovenia and Yugoslavia and perhaps Eastern Europe, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, tried to return to the early 20th century avant-garde art as a model that to present and reconnect and reconstruct the lost continuity with the genuine tradition, which has much more to do with the desire to reconnect with the true values of socialist and communist project than to the overthrow of it that is often mistakenly interpreted from context that didn't understand and live this internal experience that we have as participants of the society. So, of course, I'm not going to continue this and turn it into lecture, but I just want to finish with the remark that what we experience is by the end of socialism and at the beginning of the 90s was this shocking conflict between the over-institutionalization of the Western world and under-institutionalization of our own context, which also meant we were largely unprepared, largely discursively, that we have large deficit in our capacity to explain our own position and sharing this with the rest of the world. And I hope and I believe that this conference is making a step to overcome these conflicts and disproportions created in the past.